You're in a podcast, Ryan.
The truth was a burning green crack through my brain. Audacity sound spikes glimpsed out of the corner of my eye. The endless repetition of the act of riffing awkward silences being cut to make me sound more clever. The paranoid feeling of about 4 people listening to my every word while doing chores or something. I was in a podcast. Funny as hell, it was the most horrible thing I could think of.
This is like a script. It's not a game script. It's a script.
Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
Because the most subtle nuances of emotions could be seen on screen. With the PlayStation 4, games have now finally reached that stage.
Okay, so Ryan, I just want to ask you, what did you think about this wonderful old-ass game?
I really enjoyed it.
Good, I'm glad.
I really, both from a gameplay and story perspective, I really liked them.
Now, you don't like noir fiction, do you?
Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I'm a huge film noir fan, neo-noir and sort of old-school noir. I forced you to watch what I consider maybe my favorite movie, which is Kiss Me Deadly. I'm currently working my way through all of Raymond Chandler's books. I've read the first 2 Philip Marlowe novels now, and I'm reading the third. And obviously, I've read what is it? Red Harvest and what's the thing? Maltese Falcon. And I've seen the film, so I'm a pretty big film noir guy, and these games are not. They're in the Sin City subgenre of noir,
Which is exactly...
which is like everything sort of turned up.
Okay,
like
cranked
the
up
sort
to
of
11.
self-aware, sort of hyper noir.
Yeah, emphasis on the self-aware.
Emphasis on self-aware, especially with this one. Especially in the second.
Might as well. Oh yeah, man. The second game is
almost
like a joke.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it's a joke.
I just mean like when you're going through the fucking fun you go through that fun house
3 times.
like twice.
Three times. Once when it's exploding. You go once normally, once fighting people, and once exploding. It's all an extended gag about... We should get into this later, because I do want to talk about the weird metafiction in 2 with the TV shows.
Yeah, well, at first we'll just start to say we're talking about Max Payne 1 and 2 as essentially a lead up to... Because they're not obviously...
No, they were made with clearly not that much money. Because they couldn't afford to have cutscenes.
And one of those things that I really miss that just doesn't happen anymore, where a relatively shoestring budget, they just do something new and it sends them to the stratosphere.
Yeah.
Which just doesn't... It happens with indie games, but not mid-size, slightly... I mean, I guess it still happens.
Maybe the same thing's happening
saying.
to video games as happening to movies. In the sense that there's not a mid-budget, mid-size
that's definitely happened.
Thing, right? Yeah, because
and right now we're kind of having a sort of comeback with Remedy right now. They're under a publisher, and their latest game, Control, is okay. So we have kind of that high-budget ray tracing spectacle, but we're also going to use a little bit of live action because it's cheap.
Mm-hmm, which is also what they did with the previous game they did, which was called Quantum Break.
But that was more big ass Microsoft money tying into a TV show.
Well, putting a TV show in the game.
Yeah,
in a very strange way.
Maybe we'll.
I have not played it,
Quantum.
so I don't know if it works.
Yeah,
but I just know that's what they did. But this, it feels it occupies the place in video games that film noir occupied in 50s Hollywood. Because film noir was not expensive. And film noir is a misnomer because obviously no one considered them film noir. That was coined in the 60s by French film critics. Or 50s. It was coined by French critics. It wasn't used in the industry. But like these films that would later be called noir were the mid-budget genre fare that studios used to pad out their release schedule between your, Gone with the Wind and the Wizard of Oz.
And to a certain extent, it's like there was an upper limit of what video games could be, and of course, Max Payne 3, that's at the time it was like one of the most expensive games ever made. And so it's a very clear, it'll be great to compare and contrast just the difference of philosophy between the writers. I want to talk about Max Payne 3 a lot. I've been pushing for that.
No, that's not what we're here to do.
No. I'm saying I wanted, like, I put these games on the list because it gives me an opportunity to shit on Dan Houser.
Right, but that's for next time.
No, for now we just talk about Sam Lake,
a wonderful man,
charming,
incredibly
Finnish man who loves movies.
But also like Max Payne 2 made me appreciate that he has a real like sense of humor.
These games are funny as hell.
These games are very funny.
Yeah.
But that's
which I was talking to you about, like,
Board.
when we were talking about the Halo stream or over it, that this is what people meant
by a good video game script.
Unless you're talking about like an RPG, which is kind of almost a different form coming from a whole
different tradition. Because that's coming out because that's obviously coming out of tabletop RPGs.
Right.
Is where video game RPGs are coming out.
So this is kind of the level that we're talking about, which, which of course it's like, it's, what I'm saying, it's not you can't do an HBO show yet.
No, you can't. And there are certain limits, and it's interesting to compare. Well, that's a specific thing from 2. So, do we want to start by just talking about 1?
Yeah, we'll do our best to just stay on 1 for now.
So 1 is interesting. So the first thing I got to say is the opening cutscenes from 1 is hilarious because he has that monologue and then it zooms in on Sam Lake's smirking face, a PNG of Sam Lake's smirking face plastered over this model. And it's funny. He looks like the clearly you don't own an air fryer meme.
And that's the thing
hilarious.
With these, the level we're on, it's like there's an understanding that we can't be that self-serious because look at this guy's face.
Yeah. Right. And because you have that, and then immediately, of course, you go into the comics. And so the comics, because in addition to being a noir guy, I'm also a big comics guy. And the comics, they're interesting because the comics are a way around the fact that we can't afford to have cutscenes. But we also can't afford to have an artist. So actors. So what the comics are obviously just photos of Sam Lake and the other people who made the game in costumes.
And I believe what you pointed out, the most obvious version of this is that the guy who goes crazy on drugs, who's supposed to be a gangster, and it clearly looks like Mike from IT.
Yes, it looks like some kind of schlubby IT guy who they've drawn in Photoshop a Mike Tyson tattoo on to try to make him look like a gangster, but it does not work. And that cutscene is the funniest in the game because of that.
That's a whole strange aside.
What?
That just like it borderline gets into horror, like with the weird culty shit.
Right, but because he's got that, I expected that to come back more. I expected there to be something supernatural going on, and there never is. Where he's like doing magic, and then he's screaming, and he turns into he like starts looking demonic, but it doesn't matter because you just kill him.
No, it's just it's a set piece.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing comparing it to. But Yeah, so these cutscenes, quote unquote cutscenes, are all just like comic panels that are just photo shoots of the creators of the game doing dinner theater.
Yeah, and it's
Which
great.
is great.
It's so
It's awesome.
wonderful.
It's so funny. But then they did get real voice actors. So Max Payne, despite being a tall, skinny Finnish man,
Is voiced by James McCaffrey. That's his name.
has an extremely deep, rumbling voice, which I thought created a little disconnect.
Yeah, I mean, and it clearly, as evidenced by Max Payne 2,
They clearly
It's-
weren't. They clearly didn't want to do that. That was clearly a budget thing. Because as soon as they were in a position where they could afford to hire a real actor to as the physical basis of Max Payne, they did. And there, the voice disconnect isn't as serious.
and I think that's what holds it all. What makes it charming is that you've got all that silliness, but you have a good voice actor and you have some honest to God good writing from Sam Lake.
Yeah, Sam Lake. You said this is like what was considered a good video game script, but like, yeah, Sam Lake is clearly a talented writer, and
I
he's
guess I'm
able to-
talking more in like structure, and
yeah,
like
then
what
I
we
will talk
expect
about
with
that.
emotion.
But yeah, but I
and
like
whatnot.
the sort of weird poetry of Max's narration a lot. Like it's Sin City-esque in the sense that it's like clearly it's clearly trying to be hard-boiled narration in a way that a real hard-boiled movie isn't, because it doesn't know it's hard-boiled. You know what I mean? Like it's elevating. It's like elevating. Like Max Payne's narration is almost on the level of like free verse poetry.
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting because there's a quote, I don't remember who said it, about Raymond Chandler. Because Raymond Chandler was a poet before he started writing crime novels, and said his work was prose poetry about violence, and that's how I would describe Max Payne's narration.
Yeah, and it's just I don't know, like you this was part of this was done by this was published by 3D Realms, which did Duke Nukem. And so part of the concept is like the thing that we're going to have in this game is like a character with a voice, which is novel still, relatively speaking, in this time. And it kind of reminds me of BJ Blazkowicz, because it's like now all you do is you give a little bit of narration and you've turned your murdering psychopath video game character into someone very sympathetic and lovable in lots of cases.
Right. I mean, you mean reboot BJ Blazkowicz.
Yeah, from the Machine Games.
The
ones.
Machine Games reboots, yeah. That's true, but I mean, because BJ Blazkowicz in those games still has the thing of looking like that, like being absurdly muscular.
Oh yeah.
But whereas Max Payne has the thing of he is a tall, thin Finnish man.
Yeah.
in a like leather jacket.
So just let's have a little aside. I'm assuming that you enjoyed slow motion shooting dudes. In this game.
That was fun.
It kind of reminded me of, because I played Control pretty soon after this, and I don't know how many people worked on Max Payne that worked on Control 20 years later. Probably not that many. But there's clearly, whether it's Sam Lake or someone else, there's clearly a guiding philosophy, because it's kind of the same thing where I wouldn't call the combat elegant, but the mechanics are what create the spectacle, which is where the fun is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Sam Lake is creative director at Remedy, right? So
yeah, I think so.
I think he's probably the point of continuity between those games.
But yeah, I mean, what is there to say? Except this game did not rip off The Matrix, which people probably thought it did.
It's
but
because they're both ripping off John Woo movies.
Of course, yeah.
They're both ripping off. It's self-conscious.
There's a joke in the game.
He says, I went all Chow Yun Fat.
And there was also just a straight up what's the password? And the guy's
John Woo.
John
right.
Yeah.
John Woo. So they obviously... Yeah, that's the thing in both of these games. The henchmen are extremely culturally literate. where they'll just be discussing like movies and books that Sam Lake likes.
And we love the henchmen.
The henchmen are great. The fact that almost all of them
Max Payne.
Well, I just love the conversations you overhear, and if you don't interrupt them, they actually usually have a punchline.
Yeah.
Like there's one about the best movie endings, and so it's like gotta be I think this is Chinatown or something like that. Like it's little bits of personality is really good. But we should probably if we go linearly through the first game and talk about its plot in the broad strokes. It has the first game is very video game in the way it's paced. In the sense that it's like, okay, every time you're playing, you can't have more than 5 minutes go by without you shooting someone.
Yeah, which you can see that right from like
the beginning.
If you were doing this, I guess you know what? It'll be interesting because they're remaking these games, and God knows what like level. Because a remake, of course, could mean literally anything anymore.
But are they calling it a remake or a remaster?
It was a remake.
A remake. That's interesting.
Yeah. But I guess what I was saying was the level where his wife and child die, or he discovers that they're dead, is like your tutorial for shooting people.
Right, because you kill the guys who kill them.
And it just feels so matter of the fact. It's just like...
And the scene where you actually find them dead is so short.
Yeah.
Like, it cuts from him holding his wife, and then it's got the narration, and he explains that he joined the DEA, and he's on this task force. And then you have all... Like, everything feels like it happens too fast in the first game. A little too fast in the first game.
And the fact that it's like, we need to have combat in the part where... Not just... Like, I almost could understand, like, one guy, but he's like, you shoot at least 4 people... And it's like, we have to have combat in, like, the opening scene where I guess ideally you should be just taking in...
The obvious comparison here is the opening of The Last of Us.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because it is the defining tragedy for the main character. But in Last of Us' opening, you're helpless. There's no combat at all.
And that goes to, like, you know, video gaminess. There's the dream sequences. Or it's like, why can I die here?
That is weird, but those are also kind of exceptions to the rule I was talking about, because they're not combat focused at all.
That's true, but it is interesting. It's like, we need to insert some form of challenge here.
Yeah, we need to have you jumping over things. Well, but it also indicates this game is at least interested in, like, the dream sequences are weird, and I'll talk about them later, because I have... But, so you've got... Everything is just paced so fast where it's like your partner betrays, your partner gets murdered and your other partner betrays you, and it all just all these things are never like feel like they're given time to breathe.
Right.
Like I felt this way a lot about Mona in the first game.
Oh yeah.
Which is
who has a twin sister?
Who has a twin sister named Lisa, which is a joke.
Right.
Who's married to one of the main villains and then dies. But Mona is like actually barely in the game, and feels like she's only there because we need a femme fatale. Because
we're fulfilling
right, but
genre.
She doesn't really serve a purpose in the story that much, and is barely in it because we don't have time for that because we need to go to more action. So that just all feels weird, like her whole existence, and he has a partner who betrays him, who he kills, and then it doesn't matter again. And he has another partner who's murdered, and I guess that's the murder theoretically that he's been framed for, but it doesn't really matter because that guy shows up and then gets murdered. It just feels like no plot point or relationship is ever given time to breathe.
No, and it's like, well,
for us to care.
It's a video game where you're mainly here for slow motion shooting in the face, and we don't want to fuck around too much.
We'll put in as much as we can, but like, and the story is basically a linear progression, you know.
Yeah, I mean, so these are more fresh in your mind. So for me, it's a little bit more of a blur, but it's
it's divided into 3 parts. With basically 3 different main villains.
Right.
Because you have Mike from IT, essentially. I don't remember his name. Then you have... I don't remember any of their names. You have Mike from IT, you have Tony Soprano, and then you have Sam Lake's mom.
For example, Nicole Horn is actually real life mother of Sam Lake himself. So I don't know if there's anything psychological about it, making the bad guy to be your mother.
So you have the three, and we're saying that because she's modeled on his mom, like his mom posed for the comic things.
Right.
And so basically, it is a boss structure. Where it's like, okay, here's the boss for this section, and there's even like mini bosses.
Yeah, like
the trio.
That asshole,
in the Mafia Mansion.
Or that asshole who early on does a flip off a train.
Yes.
In a very awkward in-video game cutscene.
Yeah. The in-video game cutscenes are hilarious. The in-engine cutscenes are hilarious. But
yeah.
So you've got bosses and then mini-bosses. It's all very video gamey, and the story is built around that. Because the story is this mystery. And it's like, okay, I think this guy's behind it. I got to get to him and kill everyone between us. And then, but now that guy's dead, it turns out this guy's behind it. And then that person dies, and then it's this new thing.
And of course, it's just like, and over the course of this, Max Payne kills probably at least 1,000 people.
Yeah. He
and
kills...
of course, but you know, we're not thinking about that yet.
Right. Yeah.
Who cares?
Well, yeah. The closest you get is like Vladimir in the second game brings up like his absurd mafia body count.
It's also like almost a funny joke that Max Payne 2 is like, yeah, you're back on the police force. Like, I understand like he got strings pulled for him, but it's
by
like
Woden, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, you're fine, dude. What's a few thousand bodies?
Well, I mean, they were. I'm pretty sure all of them would have been good kills.
But, you know, also, I'm not bringing this up as, like, a problem, of course. It's the problem, I think, it came into people's minds just through the nature of graphics.
Yeah.
Because you are still dealing with an abstraction, because it's not realistic looking.
Very cube people.
But once you start getting to that PS3, you know, once you get to that, like, Joel slicing someone's throat open...
Right.
You start actually maybe thinking a little bit more about these as like people. I mean, I know it's like two different tones, but you get what I'm saying.
Deliberate.
Because
you've more brought up this is a problem with Uncharted.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that the more realistic graphics you have, the more like video gamey elements stick out.
Yeah. When they look more like people.
In these types of games, you know, it feels like a fight to fight against that, and you fight against that by having like, you know, godly animations, and like, but there's still that push and pull. But now here we're back in the old days where we're not thinking about that end of the spectrum at all, you know.
So about the way the story's structured, it just feels like the mystery. Like, it's just Max Payne is not actually solving a mystery. He's just having a bunch of twists revealed to him. Like, he goes to the place, and he finds the main guy, and kills them, but then there's a new main guy. And you can never sit still for too long, because you have to keep going.
What did you think about this being a whole, like, secret society drug
The introduction...
thing? What did you think about all that?
Because that's really... I mean, I thought it was fine, like, because it's all military shit. And you go to an underground lab, and the inner circle, and that like this Masonic conspiracy, like Freemasonic conspiracy. It's weird, but I guess it makes sense if you want to have it escalate beyond just you killing mobsters.
It makes sense with it's a conspiracy.
Yeah,
you got to have a conspiracy. I thought it was, I don't know, like. Okay, so, you know what's weird? There's the part where... I forget precisely how this plays out, but Max Payne shoots himself at some point because he killed his family. Like, he has a vision of himself killing his family.
And he kills the vision of himself, yes.
So, I thought for a split second, like, there was going to be a reveal that he actually killed his family.
I thought that, too.
Okay, and I didn't realize... that's like a common stupid fan theory that people have like pestered Sam Lake about before.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah, and
I mean, that comes back in 2, where he talks about having a vision of him killing his family.
And it's like, nope, it's just the guilt. It's just a manifestation.
Right, he
of
just
his
metaphorically
guilt.
thinks he killed his family. But no, the twist, because I did think that was going to be the twist.
Right. I thought it's interesting.
I absolutely thought the twist was going to be that he killed his family. And 2 even seems to build that up more when you are chasing an evil version of yourself in the nightmare after you get shot. But no.
But it doesn't go there, even though that would be
there.
kind of interesting. But
yeah, and there is a ton of stuff that seems like it's foreshadowing it in both games. But that's never a twist it goes for.
I think the one thing that kind of bored me about the story was just that it was about a super drug.
Right, you have this weird sign, but it's a super drug, but it's weird because what does the super drug actually do? Is it just like heroin but more?
Probably not heroin.
Not heroin, but what? Like,
yeah,
makes you not feel pain, I guess. It makes you.
And like the guys who killed his family, they were like high on the drug, right?
He calls them junkies, but we also know they were hitmen sent by the secret military people. Like, is he just wrong about them being junkies? Because that's what puts him on to investigating the drug. Were they pretending to be junkies? I'm confused by that a bit.
There's probably an explanation, but I just don't remember.
But
it well enough.
So he thinks they're junkies at some point, but they were hitmen. They were assassins.
There's like, I know there's something with his wife knew information she wasn't supposed to know.
Yes, that's the whole reveal of the. Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's
the whole reveal of the first game. Yes. So the whole reveal of the first game is that his wife worked in the DA's office and she'd been sent.
Right. Okay. It's coming back. It's coming back.
And then the reveal in the second game is that Alfred Woden is the one who sent her those files.
Yeah. Right.
That's the reveal. Right. That's a reveal in the second game.
Yeah.
It's good because I just played these, so I have all this.
So you're here to keep it up, but
So those guys were not just junkies; they were definitely hitmen sent by.
Max Payne just doesn't know that.
He just doesn't know that, but he knows they're linked to Valkyrie, or Valkyr, because that's why he joins the DEA.
So, all right, quick aside, while we're talking about junkies, when you're like wandering through some of those shitty hotels, and there's just dudes clearly like losing their shit, but they're not combative, can you just kill those guys consequence free? I
don't know.
I never
tried. Because I know if you kill certain civilian NPCs, you fail.
Okay.
If you kill, like, in the first level, that subway worker.
Yeah.
If you kill him, that's like a game over. But I don't know if the non-hostile, like, drug addict, because they can become hostile.
Right. Which kind of feels gross. Just a little bit.
And I'm glad that's gone in the second game.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, they can become hostile, and the only choice is to kill them.
But believe it or not, and I won't spoil this, there's like a grosser moment in Max Payne 3 in its depictions of people losing their shit.
Okay.
So congrats to Dan Houser on that one.
Well, hang on, let's hold that off. But but one thing I do think is, amidst all this stuff, that it feels like a very linear series of events, and like even the twist where certain people betray you, like your partner in the DEA betraying you, don't feel like they matter.
No,
he's the new partner of the DEA or is in the NYPD. I don't remember.
That's the thing, is like it has been a little bit, but you could see how like this can is the I remember lines, I remember the parts that made me smile, but the plot is like in one ear and out the other.
Right.
Because it doesn't really matter.
Right. I feel like that's less true for the second game.
I'll
explain why. Yeah. But
I agree. Yeah.
But in the one thing I do think points to something interesting is the dream sequences, because they're trying to have symbolism and like character and make you get like the whole recurring thing of it becomes stupid because it becomes gameplay, but like following trails of blood.
I think that dream sequences in games are pretty good. I think it's a good medium to utilize that, because there's tons of tricks, and you can have that sort of I don't know, like continuity where you can show. How do I put this? There's like a dream sequence in Jedi Fallen Order, and this is a trick that's probably been done like 1,000 times. But you turn around on a train, and what do you know? Oh, it's a different room.
Discontinuity.
When I mean continuity, I meant in like. Because it's a video game, things don't have to have Euclidean architecture.
Right, that's
so
discontinuity.
I meant it in the sense of like it's continuity within the you know what, fuck it. You get what I'm saying.
You don't have to cut.
Yeah, sure. Everything's on the same level of like realism, whatever.
Right, it doesn't have to make sense.
But there's lots of great video game dream sequences, and it's just a great medium for exploring all those symbolism feelings. And Max
but the
Payne's
fact
got
that the
some
game
good ones.
wants to do that is interesting. And I mean, I do love the bit where he picks up a phone and he hears a parody of his own internal monologue,
and it's just nonsense.
And he calls it nonsense.
Yeah,
and he puts it down. That's funny.
And of course, the joke that we wrote, that I wrote in at the beginning of this, the famous fourth wall break.
Yes.
And what I love about it is it's extremely funny, and it's funny because Max Payne takes it seriously.
Yes, he thinks the scariest. Well, that even more in the second game, like in the final dream sequence in the second game, he says like, "I thought I was a ghost floating above myself," which is a joke about the player and the camera.
Yeah, and I just I think I talked to you about this like off the air, where we all hate, or you and I hate at least, the fucking Deadpool like wink at camera bullshit. Yeah. That's pervasive. And my thought was, if you're gonna have a fourth wall break, it should be used like for horror. Or at least it should be unsettling, and I like that. Like, it's a joke, but it's a joke. I mean, He says it, funny as hell. I couldn't imagine a worse thing, or something along those lines. Yeah, because a video game character or a fictional character finding out they're fictional,
which is not quite what's happening to Max Payne.
Not quite, but it's like, I don't know. The real life parallel is like, I don't know, figuring out that everything's run by evil billionaires, or insert whatever revelation you figure it out.
I mean, it's more like finding out free will doesn't exist, which is something Max Payne in 2 explicitly talks about. If you made different choices, it wouldn't be you.
That's a great line.
That's a great line, to be someone else looking back. That is great. So for 1, you've got that, but I feel like the dream sequences are kind of let down by the rest of the game. Because you've got this great image of him following a trail of blood into the darkness, right?
As in, like, nothing is quite as good as they are?
As in, like, that's not the sense I get from the rest of the story.
Oh, okay.
Because it's so action-focused, it never feels like you're actually solving a mystery. So the great image of the detective following the trail of blood into nothing doesn't work as well. Because it doesn't feel like that's what Max is actually doing.
Yeah, and this is kind of a thing where there are, at this time, there were plenty of detective games, but those are point-and-click adventures.
Right.
And that lines up more with a story about figuring out a conspiracy, but that's not what this game is about. This game is about slow-motion shooting people. So you could say maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but of course, I don't think Max Payne would be better.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be better.
No, if you made it more of like the Arkham style or something like that, where you added like surface level detective stuff.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. But that's about all I have to say about the first game. But I have a lot more to say about the second.
I do want to, before we finish up, I didn't get a chance to bitch about this game can be a little rough sometimes. And I did have to fucking do the attrition quick save battle. Especially, I'm talking about that hallway with, like, the rocket launchers.
Yeah.
Like, the final level. Fuck that
the final
particular spot.
Yeah.
And
I have to wonder, just about the structure of the final level, is that a reference to anything? Fighting your way up a skyscraper?
I mean, I was thinking of They Live, but I'm sure there are other movies where
I
people
was
fight
thinking
their
of
way.
the finale of Cowboy Bebop.
Okay, I haven't finished that yet, but
Oh, that's not a spoiler.
I'm sure that there are other movies, comics, anything of people fighting their way up a building.
Yeah.
But it can get a little rough, and that's why I don't know. Like, I was thinking about this because now with like indie games, there's more of an understanding where if you're gonna do that kind of brutal quick death, that you need. It's more like level based. Like the modern version of this is almost like Hotline Miami or something like that.
Yeah.
But so they're like remaking these games. But honestly, the remake that I would want would just have the first game in the second game's engine, because I love the small tweaks they make to the combat in the second game.
Yeah, I can see that.
So let's talk about.
Let's talk about the second game.
I want to start off with a basic question, which is, so this game came out. It's under Rockstar now. It actually sold less. Kind of ended the series there for a little bit. But which one do you prefer, one or two?
Two.
Okay, me as well.
Absolutely, because 2, I think it's better structured. It's better written, and I think the gameplay improvements are an improvement.
I told you I like the combat because that tweak of every kill you get slows down time even more.
Yeah,
and that finally just, I don't know, it made the combat it feel like you're a little bit more of master of your own destiny and you can take control more. The only downside was that I felt like I was actually doing less of the dodge.
I was too. I was using the dodge way less.
Yeah, which it's like, I don't know, that seems like a little bit of a, what's the fun of slow motion if you're not doing a fun dive? But, anyways, why do you like Max Payne 2 from like a narrative and structure format more than the first one?
Well, for one, I think it makes better use of its characters, in that mostly it is characters from the first game who felt underutilized, and I feel like Sam Lake realized they were underutilized.
Like Mona Sachs.
Like Mona Sachs, like Vladimir. And it sort of works them. And it doesn't, like, it has the same cast of characters the whole game. It's not like okay, go here because it's this guy, go here because it's this guy.
Right.
It's more of these intertwining relationships and a series of twists involving this core cast. So it feels a bit more stable. And less like less video gamey, less like go from point A to point B and kill your way through these people and then kill your way through these people.
Yeah, and I understand why maybe, for whatever reason this game just didn't do as well as the first one. But I understand, like, the first game you have that very clear drive of, I'm going to kill the person that killed my family.
Yeah, and this game, it's all less clear.
So I can kind of understand why some people might prefer that, but there's just so many other factors to really like about this sequel.
Because it starts off with Max Payne. Well, eventually the murder of his family gets roped back into it, but it does start out with Max Payne just being a cop.
Which I thought that they, the fact they worked in a little bit more just, there's the whole sequence where you're just kind of wandering around the office, like doing random shit.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. The pacing is also different. It gets a bit closer to what we think was like modern, something like Last of Us, where you have like the walkie-talkie sections. You're not fighting. Like that whole level at the amusement park, whatever it's amusement park.
Yeah.
Where you are just looking at shit.
And probably laughing, because it's like a joke.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's also like, okay, here's my aside. I love all the fake TV shows.
Oh yeah,
They're so good.
Max Heat was one of them.
What was Max Heat? I don't remember that at all.
Oh, maybe Max Heat was. That was like what they originally named Max Payne before they changed it.
Right, I didn't see that.
I know one of the
fake
TV shows is Max Heat, but I
didn't
remember.
see that. Because the one you have the one that's the biggest one, which is the one the theme park is themed around, which is Address Unknown.
Oh yeah.
Then you have Lords and Ladies, and then Dick Justice. And Dick Justice, the whole joke is that it's Max Payne but blaxploitation.
Right.
Like, what if Max Payne was a blaxploitation hero? Which is funny, but and then you have Lords and Ladies and Address Unknown have the joke of Sam Lake as the main character.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good. And it is because they're both done in the way that they did the comics for the first game, where it's like fake, where it's just them in costumes and it's pictures, which is very funny. And both of those get tied into the main story in a weird way.
Through the dream sequence, right?
Through the dream sequence. Yeah, mainly through the dream sequence. And obviously through the amusement park. And there's like thematic connections because Address Unknown does, I believe, show up once in the first game, where it seems to just be a joke about Twin Peaks. But then they took that idea and expanded it into this whole running through line in the second game about this show that's from the 90s and was canceled prematurely and is clearly a sort of take on Twin Peaks. And I don't know if it's Sam Lake fucking with people, but because the twist in that show is that the main character did kill his girlfriend, or is the killer he's chasing.
I think he is fucking with
He's fucking with the people who think that the twist is supposed to be that Max Payne killed his wife.
Yeah, and it's just this whole this one just has an atmosphere around it with the it is about not having free will essentially.
Yeah, but the second game,
I mean, at least like if everybody's kind of playing a part and then they feel helpless to stop it kind of thing.
But the show as like a construct is just so interesting because I always like fictional media that feels real. You know what I mean? Like this feels like a show that I could see myself watching because it's specific enough. It's not because in the first game it's just a joke about in the first game it's just a joke about Twin Peaks, but they like basically made an outline of a season of television,
which is like what
to
makes
be like what
whenever there's that sort of joke / like a thing within a thing, the more effort put into it,
the better. Because
it makes it funnier.
They've clearly thought out. They basically approached this like they were outlining a real movie or TV series.
Yeah.
In terms of like, no, it has twists, it has all this stuff. And like lore. And of course it keeps coming back, like mirrors are more interesting than television. Or mirrors are better than television. It keeps coming back and it leaks into Max Payne's dreams. And obviously they take the hilarious line for the first game where he's like, my city, Noir York City. And expand that into like the whole setting of this show where he's like in an alternate dimension called Noir York City. And then the other show they do is like Lords and Ladies.
That one I do not think I watched. Like I think
I did.
I watched a little bit of it, but I did not stick around for the whole shtick.
That one is kind of strange because one, I don't know exactly what it's a parody of, and maybe this is time. Maybe it's a parody of a genre that doesn't really exist anymore. But because I can clearly identify Address Unknown as a parody of Twin Peaks. But the Lords and Ladies thing, which is also from the first game, it's actually more prominent in the first game than Address Unknown was. It does have like a kind of coherent story that ends with the Sam Lake main character dying and his wife and kid surviving. And I don't know what... Because there is a moment when they reference... In the dream sequence, it does reference the show because it references like Mona as his lady or something. Like there's a moment that sort of...
Can we just talk about Mona Sachs a little bit?
Yeah, we can talk about Mona Sachs.
It just like... I don't know. Is there anything... Is there anything actually there? Is she actually that interesting? Because it just seems to be like mysterious woman that he chases. And then she dies.
She's created to be... So she, in the first game, was there as kind of the token femme fatale because she doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And here it's like, well, what if we made her... Well, let's do an actual femme fatale arc with her. Where Max becomes obsessed with her, blah, blah, blah. And the answer is probably that she's not that interesting of a character.
No, and it almost just seems to be like all that plot and even meta stuff almost seems to be like she's a femme fatale. That's what she is.
She is the femme fatale, and if you
that's like all we're communicating.
Yeah, you understand the concept. Like, she doesn't have a personality outside of the femme fatale.
And it's like, that's why we're sad. That's why Max Payne is sad, because she's the femme fatale.
Because he's the noir detective and she's the femme fatale.
And we all know it, and that's what we're doing here.
We all know we all know that she's supposed to kill him, but she can't because she's in love with him. And we all know that's how it works, but I don't know if I ever believe the romance.
No, it's only just pleasing in an aesthetic sense because they have the good set dressing and music and narration. Like, it knows how to, like, talk.
Yes,
but yeah, it's all presentation.
They're just playing the trope. They're not creating a character, really.
Yeah, it's almost like everything is just presentation, in a sense.
Yeah, but I mean, the closest you get is Max Payne's. Max is more of a... In both games, Max is the most character.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, you get to be in his
the
brain,
main character,
so,
obviously,
you know.
yes. But he's the closest to an actual... I mean, no, I wouldn't say he's close. He's like a character they try to develop.
Yeah, but it feels... I think what makes it feel like more of a letdown is the fact that you play as Mona Sachs.
Yeah, you play as her, and you still don't ever understand her. Because even the parts where you play as her are narrated by Max.
Yeah,
I can't help but wonder
Yeah.
If,
I know,
how different the game would play if the parts where you play as her were narrated by her.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, that would be so interesting if you got... Because it's this weird idea that you're still in Max's head even though you're playing as Mona.
During time... Yeah, where, you know... I don't know. It's... If we're, like, doing, like, a... You know, like, if we're just talking about POV, it's, like, kind of nonsensical. If we're not... Max Payne shouldn't know exactly what she's doing from, like, a sniper tower.
There's moments where we're playing as her where he says he doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah.
But we play as her. Like, that... It got the weirdest when... So, when you're in the construction site and the people and you're sniping to protect Max.
Yeah.
And then you hear Max's thoughts from all the way down there.
Right.
Because you're still supposed to be in Max's head, even though you're playing as Mona.
Now,
it's so weird.
Remind me, were those thoughts like, Mona needs to fucking do a thing?
Yeah, they are.
Right? Because it was like tutorial, or, you know, hints or
But
whatever.
you could have easily had her do that.
Yeah.
I need to protect Matt.
I needed to protect Matt. Or maybe she can't have thoughts because she's fucking dead. And we're not.
Is that the idea that we're
not doing the thing from I don't know, whatever, that Scorsese movie where his narration gets cut off because he gets hit in the back of the head with a shovel?
What Scorsese movie is that?
I think it was Casino. It was like Joe Pesci.
I haven't seen Casino.
Joe Pesci gets like buried alive or something.
I haven't seen Casino, so I should see it.
But
yeah, so maybe the idea is that Max is supposed to be telling this to someone in the future, and from a meta perspective, right? Max is narrating this from after the end, and therefore Mona can't be narrating because she dies. That's fucking stupid, though.
Yeah, I mean,
no one would actually care.
I'm sure.
And you're being so meta. It's I know it's probably just because like trying to figure out a voice. You've got such a well-developed voice for Max. You would feel the need to develop an equally well-developed one for Mona. And that would be difficult because Mona's not much of a character.
Maybe. I mean, I could just see it as like, why would you change the format now and like, put forth that effort to try.
But you are changing the format anyway.
They did go through all the effort of like giving Mona different flips and shit. So.
Yeah, and you've already shaken up the format by playing as her.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a brief moment to talk about that Mona and Max are now hot and sexy. Not to say that Sam Lake is a charming, gorgeous man.
Yes.
But
it's so weird when he walks into the shower. The locker room.
But this is like the rock starification of like, in the sense of like, we've got a budget, we've got real actors, Yeah, now we can have tits.
But
too.
we don't actually have tits.
No.
There's no there's no tits, but there's ass, and it's like, no, and I just was like, guys, the text still isn't there yet. You can't do this yet. They're still fucking polygons. You can't do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't work at all. You gotta wait a few years. We're not ready. It's not ready.
The thing is like,
you can't
that's
make
all that
them sexy.
That's all that existed. So I mean, people are jerking off to PS1 Lara Croft, and like, God knows how you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, when I was a kid, you know, I'm already onto the original Xbox. I'm on this generation,
Right.
so can't relate. Sorry.
Well, look, because I'm looking back at it, right?
Yeah.
But it feels ridiculous. Trying to make these not...
Except that you have, like, the nudity in the comics, which, of course, you know, it's a drawing.
Is there nudity in that?
Oh, yeah. Or at least, like... No, there's a specific panel, I remember, where she's, like, lifting up her shirt. I swear you see a boob.
You don't. I swear you don't.
All right.
I'm looking...
No, this one I'm choosing to be petty about.
I'm trying to figure it out as well, because I genuinely don't know.
I'm just getting a bunch of terrible mods that just make monosex nude all the time.
Internet porno.
Okay, you almost see, but you don't see her nipple.
You see an underboob.
Yeah, but you don't... There's not actual... Okay, yeah, you don't see anything you couldn't see in a PG-13 movie.
Right.
There's no actual nudity.
But of course, you're doing something that you couldn't do with your last budget because you're not asking, you know, Sally the programmer.
You're not asking Brenda from customer service. You're not asking Brenda from HR to take her top off, right?
Or even just to like, hey, I know, you know, you're working on this level or whatever.
Hey, can you make out with me, the writer, Sam Lake?
Or I'm going to draw you making out. It's fine, though.
Yeah. We're going to have our models, that's me and you, make out. So obviously, yeah, I guess.
But there's a little bit loss of the charm, of the low-budget charm of the first game.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's one of the things I like about the shows is they put some of that back in.
Yeah,
because there's a moment because you didn't watch the Lords and Ladies one, but there's a hilarious moment where Sam Lake Lord kills his like brother or whatever, and the guy is just holding the sword in his armpit, really obviously towards the camera. You can clearly see he's just holding the fake sword in his armpit, and it's like, ah! It's awesome.
I guess what I'm just saying, it's like, I don't know, like,
but
the first game,
but there it's not real. It's also fake jank because it's deliberate. That's the joke.
Yeah, it's just the first game was cute, and the second game is
more polished.
And I mean, it is what it is. It's just interesting how like through all three games, there's kind of just no visual continuity.
Right, because well, they're stylistic, I guess, with the comic panels. But yeah, Max Payne is a different. All of the characters in the second game are now based on real actors and therefore look completely different from how they looked in the first. Like when Vladimir shows up, it's like Vladimir just wore like a cap all the time in the first game, right?
Which I was almost like sad that Vladimir turned out, even though I think it's actually kind of well done.
Yeah, no, so do I, because it did make me sad that Vladimir's.
Yeah, because I'm like this wonderful Russian man who
helped us, who gave us guns.
The guy who's like just almost no strings attached. Just I know he's got like his own motives, but he's just nice to Max, and they have a good conversation.
Out to be the villain, the final boss.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I really like
in the first game, he's just a nice guy.
I like the way he's described in the first game, where he says he's one of those bad guys that's almost one of the good guys.
Yeah, and I like that. If we're getting back into the story, yeah, just the whole conflict of all this ended up being was that Max Payne killed his girl, and that's the conflict. That's good stuff. I mean, there's more to it, but you know, like that's why they're fighting in the end.
In the end, because People are trying to kill Max Payne way before he kills her.
No, I'm just saying that it's like, yeah, the final boss, it has that. You know what? This game's only 5 hours, and the previous game was more around 8. And I was just thinking about, you're never going to get that ever again anywhere, and I hate that because I would love it if a studio was like, I mean, God knows if it was on purpose or whatever, but I would love if more studios are like, yeah, what if we made like a tighter game, not a flabbier one, you know?
Yeah. I was going to say something smart about... Well, the plot is kind of weird. Because you mentioned the conspiracy stuff in the first game, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And this seems to, like, lower the conspiracy? Because
in what way?
In the inner circle in the first game are like the people who run the U.S. government, basically. And then in the second game, it's like, one of their prominent members, in fact, the one who's prominent enough to start a civil war, is just like a gangster.
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
Like they're just mafia. Like
They're
they
super
could be,
mafia.
They're super mafia, but they could be destroyed if this Russian gangster declares war on them.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that they have their fingers in, like, so many pies is, like, kind of undercut. And it seems to imply in the first game that every member of the Inner Circle dies except Alfred.
Right.
But it retcons that completely in the second game, where they're like, no, they're actually all around, but they're being killed off because Vladimir and Woden are at war, so they're killing off all the other members. But Vladimir is, like, equal to Woden, which that just doesn't fit with the way that Woden was portrayed in the first game.
I mean, it's also, if we're like, it's weird just because, remember the facilities from the first game? Like, that shit was crazy.
Yeah.
You know, like,
but now they're just gangsters who are fighting over gun trafficking.
Yeah.
Which is lame. And they seem to be localized entirely to New York. Yeah, it weirdly downgrades the conspiracy stuff. I think the plot is well done enough that I don't care that much. But it does weirdly downgrade it.
And it ultimately concludes with an emotional gut punch, of course. But not not really a gut punch, because you should see it coming from a mile away.
Right. But also, this game was really dedicated to... It almost feels like the big mistake we made in the first game is that some of the supporting cast were alive. So we'll bring back all the survivors from the first game and kill all of them.
I wonder if, like, were they thinking at all about, like, the possibility of a third game?
Because they wipe out... They bring back a ton of characters established in the first game and wipe them out completely. Like, are there any named characters, like major named characters from this second game who are still alive at the end besides Max? They even killed Chief Bravura, and that didn't even matter.
Right.
They just killed him in the intro, and then he's alive again in flashbacks, but he's dead.
It makes me think, or I guess for now, it's like people were kind of unsure about the direction of the third game, and of course, I mean, we'll talk about that, but of course, like, it makes sense just starting from a place of like, okay, put Max Payne in a different country.
Yeah,
like, what do you do?
Yeah, because the second game had characters from the first it could build on. But because the second game ends in such a bloodbath, where I don't think there's any established characters who are still alive. There's really nothing you can do. You can't play around with the cast anymore because they're all dead. So that's an interesting choice. I do have one question about the comic book, the cutscenes, because I told you that I think they're based on the artist they're trying to imitate with their sort of Photoshop filter stuff is Bill Sienkiewicz. Right.
And the one that you showed me of him tracing over Neil Gaiman, that one did look a lot like that.
Yeah, because he does go through a lot of... He's not tracing, he's drawing him as a model. Oh, no, that's not Bill Sienkiewicz. The one I sent you was Dave McKean.
Oh, okay.
Because those are the two I think are most likely to be people they're trying to imitate with these... Because Dave McKean actually incorporates photographs into his art a lot. But also because Sienkiewicz, he includes a lot of like sort of particle type things that's just remind me a lot of the style they seem to be trying to go for.
Well, from what you showed me, it does make sense.
Yeah, I was just curious if they were, or if they were even deliberately imitating anyone.
So I guess to kind of cap things off, like I said, ends with Mona Sachs dying, unless if you like beat it on hard and then she lives, but like who cares? Except that's stupid.
That's a strange thing to do.
Yeah, I never looked up the alive ending. It's not, she's dead in the third game. It's like an Easter egg, whatever.
Yeah, because that makes trying to write a sequel even more strange.
But I guess like, did that ending work for you for whatever?
I mean, it felt inevitable because that's how the femme fatale stories always end.
Yeah, and I think I could have felt something if they just had a little bit more meat to any of Mona's writing. And did maybe, like we were talking about, where we just got a little bit more of... I mean, she almost... it's weird. Like, they make this joke where, like, that she's like a ghost, because I had taken enough of break between like the first and the second game where I was like, I thought like she was like dead, not like I totally forgot that there was like an implication in the first
that
game
her body
that
disappears, and so it's implied she's still alive.
Yeah, so I had like a half-second thought where I was like, is he like imagining her or something? Like,
no, because her body, you find her dead, but then her body disappears.
Yeah, but I don't know. It would have been nice if they could have actually like elevated the trope instead of just
doing
about
it completely.
Yeah,
but in a slightly self-aware way.
Yeah, just a weird. I mean, like that's what I'm still left with. So I was listening to what was his name? His name is like Noah Gervais, and he does pretty like long form stuff. And he did ones about the Max Payne games. He did not like this one. And I think he was kind of annoyed by the meta stuff. And ultimately just like asking, it's like, what am I supposed to get from all this? What am I supposed to get from just constantly talking about the inevitability of being a femme fatale and the inevitability of tragedy and all this?
I think this is before video games tried to say things.
Yeah, but it's like, it almost feels close, where it's like you're just missing just some extra element there to really cap it off, to make it almost like a great story, but it just doesn't quite have it.
It's got this whole thing near the end about Paradise Lost.
Oh, yeah, right.
Where he starts quoting, because there are some interesting references that it goes for. You've got that whole thing... So the other in-universe media I didn't bring up, Baseball Bat Boy.
Oh, shit. How could we have not talked about
How could we have forgotten Baseball Bat Boy?
Especially with a whole level based around protecting a
gangster
really into
talks
it.
like... Also, this game, crazy anti-Italianism in this game.
Oh, yeah.
Hilarious.
It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, like where it is like... This is the classic war of Scandinavia versus the Mediterranean. Of Sam Lake's extremely negative portrayal of Italian Americans.
Well, you know what though? Somehow there is a continuity, and Dan Houser will continue the tradition of Italian
that's
hatred
awesome. That's awesome.
in Max Payne 3.
Because like it is interesting though that all these sort of gangster stereotypes, and I almost wonder how much of it is being written from the perspective of someone who's watched a lot of American movies, but is not himself obviously an American.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder how much that impacted. Because I jokingly called the second boss from Max Payne 1 Tony Soprano, because he basically is. But yeah, this whiny Italian guy. You have to protect him. But I was going to say something smart about Baseball Bat Boy. Hang on.
Right.
Because they have that whole gag where the villain of Baseball Bat Boy is named after a physics concept. He's named Maxwell's Demon. And there's a joke where he's trying to his goal is to create entropy by like, he's apparently an experiment created by Dr. Entropy. and wants to turn the universe into a closed system.
I missed all this.
That's a joke. So in the nightmare, if you fight, if you watch the TV where it shows Vinny Gagnetti's death,
Yeah.
where he's like, who? Because he asks him like, who is the big bad of? Also, anti-Russianism, very appropriate for a Finn. That's a joke, Sam Lake. I love you. But anti-Russian stuff is also very appropriate for someone from Finland. Where he's like, who is the big bad? And he says, Maxwell's demon. And then he's like, who invented Maxwell's demon? And he says the creator of the game, which I think is like Sammy Waters.
Oh.
The creator of Baseball Bat Boy. His name's Sammy Waters. But then he says, no, it was the physicist James Clerk Maxwell. Because Maxwell's demon is a reference to a concept in thermodynamics.
This is all too smart for me.
Yeah, so it's just interesting that they put in this weird, very esoteric academic reference.
What a fucking nerd.
And that's how Gagnetti, because he's like, wrong, and then he blows Gagnetti's head up.
What if, like, instead of a story that was talking about, like, the metafiction of femme fatales, but it was about just being Italian? And all those, all the monologues where it's like, it's inevitable, I'm Italian and I'm a gangster. It
Isn't
can't
that
be helped.
like the plot of Goodfellas?
Sure.
That's that's literally, you're literally describing the opening monologue of Goodfellas.
Oh, right.
George. Where it's like, you are just, ever since I can remember, I always wanted to be a guy. You are just describing the opening monologue of Goodfellas.
Well, yeah, but what if he was sad about it? Sadder.
I guess, yeah, because he's sad about not being a gangster at the end of that movie.
Yeah.
It was like, now I'm a nobody.
All right, anything else to say about...
They're
Max
good.
Payne
I
2?
really enjoy them. I think they're fun, like, genre exercises.
They're good, and they're before game. You know, they don't take themselves that
Too seriously. They're willing to poke, especially the second game, willing to have a lot of fun. Well, the other thing is, like, this... Okay, I was talking about this Paradise Lost thing. Because at the end when Vladimir says... He does the classic... And they've... So part of the effect of making Vladimir this blonde guy now is that he looks like the traditional depictions of Satan in illustrations for Paradise Lost. Like, Satan is sort of generally depicted with this sort of curly, flowing blonde hair. Or Lucifer, I guess. But, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then at the end when the whole thing collapses and he hilariously ragdolls, because this is in-engine... Vladimir's body hilariously ragdolls. You get it between depictions of Adam and Eve, because Adam is because that's Mona and Max, I guess. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, you know, I think more you talk about this game, it's like they were throwing stuff up at the wall just a bit.
Yeah, but they were having a lot of fun, and they were clearly thinking about stuff. But
yeah.
I don't know if there was a clear thematic point they were going to, and they don't have to. It's not even necessarily a flaw, but I just don't think...
And it's not even like, I don't know, it's not done in an annoying way. It's like, I don't know, like the Icarus imagery in Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Right.
Where you're just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Clear that it's trying to say one thing that it becomes annoying.
Yeah, but it doesn't even manage to
Doesn't
do
even
that.
say it. Yeah. But just in this case, where it's like, I don't know if it's I don't know quite what it's aiming at. It's just sort of throwing a lot of stuff in, and I like that stuff.
But they did it with such style.